Welcome to On Democracy with FP Wellman. I am Fred Wellman, your host of the show, back in the control room. Matt is in studio with us. He's recovered from his illness and is back to taunt me and force me to do things I want to do. We're coming from the warming heart of America with a great guest who's on a mission himself. So I'm just thrilled to have a chat. I got some big news on my personal front, which I usually don't tell you guys, but it's too cool not to tell you. And with all that, let's just get on with the show.
Can you imagine? Less than 2 years after MAGA Republicans attacked our very democracy, 23 Republican incumbents got a free ride to Congress with no Democratic opponent on the ballot. That's 17.5 million Americans with no choice in who represents them. Another 125 Republicans had opponents who never had the resources to be competitive. That's over half of all Republicans in Congress and 3/4 of the Freedom Caucus. With no one holding them accountable, people like Paul Gosar, who led the big lie to overturn the 2020 election and defends the January 6th insurrectionists still. With the rise of autocratic movements around the world, voters not having a choice here in our country, not putting up a fight, this is how democracy dies. And this is Mission Democracy, a new, innovative model bringing together thousands of monthly grassroots supporters to fund Democratic congressional candidates everywhere with our Forgotten Democrats community to support candidates and help them run efficient, effective, and competitive campaigns, and to target the worst of the Republican caucus and make them answer for their attacks on our rights. We've proven if voters have a choice, they turn out. In 2022, we gave Northwest Georgia a strong candidate with the resources to run a real campaign, and a record number of Democrats showed up at the polls. We need you in this fight for the long haul, because democracy is a decision. It's a commitment to compete everywhere, to give voters a choice and a voice. Join us.
Welcome. Oh, man, I love it. It's good to be here. I am your host, Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with me, Matthew Wellman, as I mentioned. Thank you so much for being here. This week's show is sponsored by umbrellas because it's pouring outside, so umbrellas, they're still good. Margie Taylor Greene is the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives today, folks. Yeah. You can't make that shit up. So that's where we are, if that tells you what kind of a day it is. The House is also kicking off their review of the Afghanistan withdrawal, which promises to be a complete clusterfuck. There's just no way around. It's going to be a partisan mess. And meanwhile, things are just, continuing in Washington is crazy. I got the greatest guest today. He's been around for a while, but before I get to him, it's Thursday and I got big personal news for us. So today I'm proud to let you know that if you haven't heard already at this point, we've launched Mission Democracy PAC with my good friend Marcus Flowers, who's already still on my computer still. I got to get a new one. And Olivia Troy, you may know from TV as she was former Vice President Pence's Homeland Security aide. We are launching Mission Democracy today to partner with our friends at Every State Blue to fund, support, and target Democratic congressional races across the country. Last cycle, 23 Republicans ran unopposed for Congress. An additional 125 Democratic candidates never broke the $200,000 threshold that considered, a viable congressional campaign. These races, we call them the Forgotten Democrats, have language. Those 23 races represent 17.5 million Americans who didn't have a Democratic candidate on their ballot. So we've launched a Mission Democracy PAC to focus on those races, the ones that are maybe too tough. People worry about flippability and winning. And if you look at the system we're in right now, and I know Chris is going to talk about it, everyone wants races that are flippable, winnable. And unfortunately, millions of Americans live in those districts that you're deciding not to participate in. We are going to participate in them. And I'm just so excited. So you want to find out more, website's up and running. It's missiondemocracy.org. I said missiondemocracy.org. You can go check it. I'd love you to join the Forgotten Democrats community. We'll be doing some cool town halls and have a town hall in 2 weeks with my co-founders and a couple famous people probably, and much more. So that's Mission Democracy. I'm so excited. I hope you'll go check it out. Again, missiondemocracy.org. We're of course on Twitter and everywhere else as always with MISSN Democracy. Well, now, so The timing's perfect, though, right? So, as we were prepping our guest, Dr. Chris Jones, he's a terrific leader from our neighboring state to the south here in Arkansas, and we're just thrilled to have him. Dr. Chris Jones grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, deep love for science. He attended Morehouse College. Now, look, I'm going to take a pause on this. So, I always tell you guys every week, I'm not going to read the biographies of my guests because they're so long and they're so crazy, but Chris's is so cool, and he's laughing. Okay, so here we go. Morehouse College on a full NASA scholarship for physics and math. Then went on to study at MIT, earning a master's in nuclear engineering, a master's in technology and policy, and a Ph.D. in urban planning. Dude, and then he became ordained as a minister, returned back to Arkansas with his wife, Dr. Jones, by the way, and there were 3 daughters, and to lead the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub. Now, he was the Democratic nominee for governor this last cycle against Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who we're definitely going to talk about, which is how this conversation started after the State of the Union address. And now he's launched his own PAC called Vortex PAC, an all-new grassroots movement that will transform Arkansas politics by building organizing power for Democrats in all 75 Arkansas counties, with their first objective, which I love, is to replace all 4 of the Arkansas Republican members of the House of Representatives. Oh my God, Chris, Dr. Jones, so glad to have you in this show, man. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Fred, man, I'm so glad to be here and excited about this conversation. Congratulations on launching your new PAC with the great Marcus.
Oh, he's great.
So look, I'm excited, man. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover, and a lot of good work to do.
So I always start off the same way. And I start off with everybody so asking my guests, well, how'd you get here? I mean, I just read your bio. Okay. You're a rocket science, for Christ's sake. Okay. And you went from getting more of an education than I've ever gotten in a lifetime, becoming an ordained minister, and then running for governor. I mean, what was the path that led you from MIT and Morehouse to running for governor of Arkansas, and now what you're doing now? How'd you get here, brother?
Yeah. I mean, I got here, I think, from the drive that comes from my love for my state.
Yep.
My family has been in Arkansas for over 200 years.
Wow.
Right. And I loved my upbringing. Was it perfect? No. Did we lack a lot of stuff? Yes. But do I feel like it gave me the foundation I needed to fail and to succeed in life? Absolutely. And so I want that for everyone in Arkansas. And even as a child, I had an encounter with our then governor, Bill Clinton. And and that sort of set the spark to say, wait a minute, I can serve in a way that makes a difference in people's lives. And that my trajectory was following my passion in life. But even at every step, I mean, whether it was energy or policy or urban planning, it was really all about creating the structures that would give people the opportunity to fulfill their destiny. Like, that's what it's really been about.
I love it. And here you are now, still doing the same thing. So, I would jump to that. You're running for governor against Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we talked about originally. She's kind of making herself the heir to the extremist mantle. I mean, maybe some of your worst fears are kicking in already. On my way here, I was reading about the law they just signed to drop the child labor reporting requirements. They've already talked about school vouchers. It's very much an extremist agenda we're seeing being implemented there. What should we expect? I mean, from her mission to jack up your state even more. I mean, and how do we fight that? I mean, we'll start, I guess, what should we expect and what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this during the campaign and noted that she's Trump 2.0,
right?
Period. A refined version of what he did, and I'll come back to that in a second. But in that conversation during the campaign, I talked about the fact that she is going to put policies in place that are so bad, and that they will work their way up to the Supreme Court and become law of the land.
Yeah,
to become kind of standard across the land. She's going to try to outdo DeSantis, is what I said, and it turns out she's trying to outdo DeSantis
right away.
So we see it, and I think it stems from we function based on what has been called a social contract, right? So the agreement we make amongst each other as a society, and our America's social contract has been based on a certain set of idealized values, right? Whether we live up to those or not. Well, you look at Donald Trump, and as a business person, he was really good at looking at contracts and saying, here's how I don't have to follow the contract. Bingo. Here's how I can get around the rules of the contract.
Bingo.
And to the point to where he got so emboldened by it, he says, here's how I'll just tear up the contract.
Right.
he brought that into the political world. And that is what she trained and learned under, and that is what she's doing. So what you see is normally our social contract is we listen to each other. We might disagree, but we especially listen to children, even if we're not going to do what they want us to do. Well, Sarah and her extremist legislators here in Arkansas literally this week said, I'm not listening to kids. They left class, came to speak out against this voucher bill scam, and the legislator wouldn't even listen to them. So I think that's the brand that we're seeing. Now I say, let's look at the flip side, because what it's done is it's galvanized a lot of people.
Wonderful.
It's made people realize, oh, this is not good. You know, it's International Women's Day.
Yep.
So, you know, shout out to all the women, you know, we're this week and this month. And folks said, well, she'd be the first woman governor. Let's give her a chance and whatnot. And I think what they're realizing is that the policies she's promoting are completely antithetical to the women's movement.
Right.
So that's what we're seeing, but that's galvanizing folks to say, no, I want something different.
That was my next question, because there's always, you know, it's physics, right? I mean, you're a rocket science, for God's sake. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? You know, I had to get it in there. See how I do this? This is quality podcasting. I'm telling you, brother. So we have, you know, but joking aside, every action has a reaction, right? And so I think that's what you see. And I wonder, you know, and that's where you come in. Let's just segue right into Vortex PAC. I think what you're doing, it sounds like what you're trying to do is galvanize that opposition a little bit, see if you can focus that. And how do you do that? I mean, do you see the reaction? I mean, is it going to, I mean, I know here in Missouri, when I was talking to my friend Crystal Quaid, I don't know if you've met her. She is the minority leader of the state legislature here in Missouri, a Democrat, wonderful, incredible woman, former guest from the first season of the show. And Crystal pointed out very well, I've got to create more Democrats, Fred. I got to create 70,000 more Democrats. I mean, so how's your mission? Where do you see yourself going forward to galvanize this opposition, if you will?
Yeah, you know, to start with the equal and opposite reaction, you know, certainly there was an action that she is brought and is bringing forward. She brought and is bringing forward. Now there's a reaction, but oftentimes, particularly in places like Arkansas that don't have the rich organizing history, that reaction is like a light bulb. It has power, but it's diffuse. Right. You can take that same power and give it a way to channel itself, and it turns into a laser. And so part of what we are doing through Vortex and through other organizations is saying, let's take all of that energy, all that power, and focus it like a laser. In the case of Vortex, we're focusing, and I love the connection between what we're doing and what you all are doing, right?
Small world, right?
Like, imagine that. We have the same mission. And that is to say, let's get better candidates. Right. Let's get candidates who can actually compete, and let's actually support those candidates.
Fight everywhere, support everywhere. That second one is the one we keep forgetting. We keep telling people to run for office, and then they run and they go like, yeah, sorry, you ain't got a chance. Have a nice day. Right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many candidates. I know you. I mean, we were looking at the numbers before we started talking, right, Chris? I looked up all 4 House seats in Arkansas. You have, and we said 2 of them didn't even raise $100,000, or well, I think the biggest one was 141. 2 reported no money raised. Right. So literally all 4 of your Republican incumbents, they're all incumbents, I believe, had essentially no opponents. An entire state. An entire state.
So a lot of folks just have no voice.
Right. They're disenfranchised. That's simply
and they're left out.
They're disenfranchised.
And so then they don't want to engage in the process.
Right. Why show up?
What we told them is, if I show up, whether I show up or not, nothing will change.
This is driving everything we're doing right now. You and I see exactly the same way. We're going to turn around and say, hey, look, we're not going to invest in your congressional race or anything, but hey, look, I really need you to come out for governor. Or in 2 years, hey, Biden's reelection. We need you to come out. Well, could you help with our congressional race? Yeah, that's great. Can you make sure you vote? you know, and there's actually studies. There's studies that show that the look, there's common sense too. When you have candidates in every race and they're effective and they drive turnout, it helps upstate. In Marcus's race, we estimated over 10,000 voters turned out in Northwest Georgia, Democratic voters that wouldn't have turned out otherwise. There were new Democratic voters. That was a fourth of Reverend Warnock's turnout for the November election.
There it is.
And so it's a 1-for-1 exchange. So you may criticize how we run, but that turnout really pushes things. And that's so I see you fight. You're going to fight that battle. And your first battle is those 4 Republicans, right? I believe I saw your press release saying
it is
starting there.
And let me get under the hood a little bit.
I love it.
Right. So here's our theory, right? People don't feel represented by their representatives.
Right.
So we're saying, tell us who you want to represent you. So we're starting with a nominate your neighbor process, and that actually launched just this week.
I saw that.
Where we're saying you send nominations in for the person that you want to represent you in Congress. Wow. We will vet them, but here's the other thing we'll do. We're going to work on triaging them. Wow. So now Fred, you may say, hey, I want to nominate Chris Jones. And we have a conversation with Chris. Nice. Chris is amazing.
He seems nice.
Right? And we said, but you know what? Chris, we think that you would be wonderful running for state legislator, for state Senate, state House, or for justice of the peace, or for a city director. Mm-hmm. Now we're building the bench. So we're grassroots, nominate your neighbor, building the bench, and then supporting them along the way by partnering with organizations like yours on training, on fundraising, on national profile, like all of that stuff.
Data.
Because at the end of the day, we have to start now. Folks always say, places like Arkansas, oh, we're 10 years away from change. Oh, we're 15 years away from change. We will always be 10 years away if we don't do the work today.
Right. I mean, it's such a simple, we've said it our entire lives. We were taught as kids, right? Every great journey starts with the first step. And it's too often, I think, especially on unfortunately, I hate to say it, on the progressive side of politics, we're always putting that first step off too long, right? It's just too hard. It's too, the abuse we took for our race in Georgia for being, what a waste of money. It's just money being thrown out. We had over 300,000 individual donors donated an average, 700,000 total donations, an average of $21. I'm not telling somebody who donates $21 that they're idiots, that they're wasting.
Right.
And that's what the Democratic machine does a lot, I think, unfortunately.
It does. It does big time. Yeah. When what you miss out on is when you fight everywhere and support everyone, then what happens is you end up with a situation here in Arkansas. Yes, I knew it was an uphill battle.
Yeah.
But you know what we did? We changed the conversation.
Yep.
And number 2, we made them spend money. I raised and spent $4 million.
Terrific.
She had to spend $18 million.
Wow.
That they did not anticipate needing to spend.
Wow.
So, if you're talking about the entire battlefield,
right,
that's helpful.
That's exactly. So we looked at that too for Mission Democracy. And I was talking to Joseph Alfonso. This is a wonderful guy. He's going to be in our town hall in 2 weeks. He ran in Michigan 4. And he was a latecomer to it, all this stuff. He's an Army sergeant, former Army. I love him. Or is he Marine? Oh God, I hope he's not watching. Anyway, I'll be in trouble for that. Joseph, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Having said that,
and my wife's Air Force, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So she didn't serve. No, don't tell her I said that. Anyway, we diverge. We digress. So having back to the point of the can, he was telling me he spent. So he closed the gap. He came within 12 points his opponent. His opponent had to spend $4 million compared to he only raised, I'm not kidding you, $31,000. He spent 15 cents per vote that he got. His Republican opponent, spent $52. And that's money. That's money he can't spend somewhere else. Ronnie Jackson, that son of a gun, former admiral down in Texas, I want to say the B word. That guy, he dropped, I think, $276,000 on other Republican races because this night, so you get it. There's a monetary cost to not opposing these people, making them run. We had Margie Taylor Greene. Let me tell you something, man. Margie Taylor Greene had no interest whatsoever in returning to Georgia 14. Honestly, she just wanted to go around the country with Trump. Her boyfriend was from our right side broadcast news. They were Trumps around the country going to Trump. She didn't want to come, but we made her come back to Georgia and run. So how do you do it? The grassroots is perfect. It's life in I live in Missouri, so I know what the life of a blue dot in a red state is like. What is the sense you're getting from folks? Are they being energized, and is it across? There's the ones you expect, but what about the ones you don't expect?
Yeah, I think my sense, my feel, the energy on the ground is that they are being energized, and here's why. In part because we had a very exciting and engaging race.
Yeah,
we still had a number of people who did not come out to vote. Because we are more a non-voting state than we are anything else.
Right.
And so these folks, I contend that we just ran out of time. We were engaging them and we just ran out of time and couldn't get to them all. What typically happens is someone runs a statewide office in Arkansas in the last several cycles. They run for statewide office. They run for a federal office. They don't win. And then they go away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What we're saying is let's change that equation. Let's take what we built and continue to build on it. And that's why when I hear about mission democracy, I get excited.
Sure.
Because the work that Marcus did is continuing on.
Right.
When I hear about Mandela Barnes's PAC, I get excited.
Yep.
Because he's continuing on the work as opposed to letting that energy diffuse again.
Yep.
We're like, no, let's keep it bound. Now, unfortunately, but fortunately, Sarah has pushed through the largest education bill probably in the history of Arkansas. One of the most expensive bills we have ever seen. It will fundamentally transform education. And she did it so fast that it's breaking things apart at the seam.
Wow.
And at the seams. And folks are realizing that, and they're bothered and upset about that. And even this week, you have high school students that are going to march on the Capitol.
Wow.
You know, you have organizers across the state that have said, you know what, let's look into a citizen's veto.
Wow.
Let's get petitions to sign so we can veto this thing.
Wow.
That's energy and effort that's brought together.
Yep.
And we're saying, because you said you were a data nerd. Hey, I'm a data nerd too.
Yep.
We're saying, like, look, let's take all that data, take all that information, and continue to use it to build.
There you go. Yeah, and that's your grassroots, right? Get them on. Them on our grassroots. Get the energy, harness the energy, and move them forward. Because that's true. Unless the organizing is so key, and we say it all the time. People say, "Well, we need to appeal to the center more. We need to appeal to fallen Republicans." No, man, I need Democrats to come the F out. It's like just come out. We've burned out so many of our voters that they're frustrated by not seeing change. They demand change. Change doesn't occur. Unfortunately, there's been times when we've had power, we didn't execute that power. So it is on guys like you who are
didn't execute it on behalf of them.
Well, that's it. Right. On behalf of the donors, right? Or the others, right? The powers that be. So we do have a sea change. It's thrilling to hear that fight is occurring in our. I mean, my God, this is the home of the Little Rock 7, right? It's
interestingly, you mentioned the Little Rock 9. Like that's not only is it the home of the Little Rock 9, but it's the Little Rock Central High School kids,
right?
Who in '57 it was Little Rock 9. Now they're the ones marching against a bill that one of their own alum is putting forward.
Jesus, man.
She graduated from the school.
Amazing.
Right. And then when you layer on that she's trying to get rid of affirmative action in the state, that she's trying to ban certain words, that they're trying to criminalize librarians. And then when you layer on that they're also trying to get, and this is frustrating because on the one hand, they're removing the parental requirement for sign off on children under the age of 16 to work.
Right.
So now the company and an agency can just put kids to work without the parental consent. And on the other hand, they're saying we're going to require 75 hours of community service in order to graduate from high school.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So you put this, and it's only for public school kids. No, Even though vouchers would send public money to private schools, only the public school kids need to do the 75 hours of work. And oh, by the way, now you can start younger and we can put you to work earlier. No, it's like, come on,
I mean,
y'all.
It's like, how is this not? It's just so fucking evil. I mean, there's just no way. There's no way. It's just evil. Kids working. And then again, you're right. It's going to force the flood to more private schools. So the people that can get away with it and get away from it will go into private schools. And who's it going to hurt? It's going to hurt the same kids that we fought for the Little Rock 9. It's going to be the same people. I have a great passion. So my connection to Little Rock is the dumbest one. But, I served in the 101st Airborne for a good chunk of my military career. And I was there for the anniversaries of Little Rock 9 events. And that was people forget that was the 101st Airborne that deployed down there. And so I've always had sort of a great pride. I see great pride when I see the photos. And I see my brothers in arms wearing the Screaming Eagle patch, escorting the kids, right? So I've always had this connection, this distant connection, having grown up in Missouri as well, and understanding it is so important. And to hear that arc of history where it bends back, I think that's the thing that happens, right? The arc of history will often bend back to where it started, and that's where we are, right? So, I mean, the fight is so necessary. I mean, so what are national groups, I mean, I think I may know the answer. I hate to do it, but so what are national groups doing? You ran a gubernatorial campaign. People must be really used to my inability to speak English, Matt. I'm sorry. There's words, my brain's very broken. But back to the topic at hand, and he can't edit this shit because I'm so fast talking. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Words, what are they? Right. You ran a gubernatorial campaign. I know what national groups did for me and mine. How are national groups coming to your help, or what do we need? I mean, how do you send the flare? How do you get the attention, and what's going on down there as far as the national attention being paid? Or you're on your own, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's not nearly enough national support.
Yeah.
That being said, I think there is growing interest. I think there's a realization that Arkansas is a battleground place like a Florida and a Texas. In fact, and some would argue even more so, because we have a large population of folks that have not been engaged, and we're a smaller state. I think people are starting to realize that Arkansas is not an expensive, similar to Missouri, we're not an expensive place to do battle in, like some of the other states, which is like your investment goes further in Arkansas. And I think most importantly, we're trying to send the clarion call that, look, what happens here matters. Like when you have our current governor go on national TV and rebut a State of the Union that she clearly didn't listen to,
right,
and push a dark divisive agenda, that resonates with a lot of folks across the country.
Yeah, that
will then themselves start to rise up, and so now you create a network that is really hard to battle against.
Yeah,
versus you come in and you say every seat is contested.
Yep.
Every person is supported.
Yep.
Now it's a different conversation. So, I think part of what folks like Mandela Barnes, like Marcus Flowers, your Stacey Abrams and the like, but particularly the folks who are just getting in, and myself, like collectively, we have to sound that alarm that, hey, y'all, look, if we don't do it here and do it now, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Because folks aren't stepping up. And I would contend that part of the reason they're not stepping up is because you're applying a similar game theory to politics. What do I mean by that? Meaning, in game theory, you want to think about probabilities and say, all right, well, if I'm playing poker, there's a certain probability that I'll win. So I'll put this amount of chips in based on that probability and whatnot. And so the metrics they're using are name recognition, amount of money you already have, number of elected officials, voter registration, and everything. But what they fail to realize is that we can shift the dynamics on the board, right? Like with the right investment, if you invest now in mission democracy, now you all are going out across the country and saying, all right, I see this congressional district that hasn't been invested in. If we can put $250,000 in there, now we change the board.
Not a lot of money.
And we shift not a lot of money at all.
In the big picture.
Last thing I'll say is that I think people see, and I can appreciate this, people see things and they think impossibility, right? So if I think it's impossible, then I'm not going to engage. When in reality, it's not that it's impossible. It is that it's improbable. It probably won't happen, but it could happen. And we can change that probability. We can change the likelihood that it will happen with the right early investment.
And moving 10 points is matters per cycle, right? It's not all W's and L's. The focus on nothing but win and loss. And I get it. People want to invest their money. My friend David Pepper in Ohio, he's one of our partners, Blue Ohio, is a state level race they're doing there. And David talks about it quite a bit. Donors call him and say, hey, where can I put my $10,000 so it's a race we can flip? Or when he goes, look, dude, if you split that in 5 and gave it to 5 different state delegates, $2,000 is a game changer for those guys. You know what I mean? And if we move, Marcus, everybody criticizes us, but it's like no Democrat ever broken 27% in Georgia 14. We got to 35. Made her run. Okay, so what's next for the next one? And the other thing I like too, Chris, and I love is, and I think you get it, and you've kind of hinted at it, is one of the things we see too is local, it's not just the candidate, right? It's that local campaign. As I talked to many of these candidates in these races, I've talked to several of these congressional candidates who weren't supported. It was their brother-in-law was their campaign manager, right? It was their stay-at-home mom neighbor, you know? And if I can train them, if they gain experience, well, they're going to be better for the next race too. Now you're building a grassroots experienced electioning, you know, voting, turnout operations, campaign teams, people who understand field director, you know, those are technical things. If we build that at the grassroots level, people really dismiss, I think, too much the power of effective campaign status, right? You know this. I know you know this, right? You know, I mean, having somebody local who understands grassroots organizing in the Little Rock area and putting them to work on a couple campaigns, I'm telling you, man, that's a super weapon. That's a super weapon.
Game changer.
Our deputy campaign manager at Marcus Flowers, Georgia, Molly Rohr. Oh my God, this girl, she's like 23, I think. She's already done 3 campaigns, you know. She was a field organizer extraordinaire, phone banking, canvassing. We had 17 field people out in that. We energized people had never seen candidates knocking their doors or not. And that is so powerful. And imagine building that in your state. In our, I'm sure that's going to be part of your thing. So, I mean, what did you hear on the road? You knocked, I'm sure you knocked a ton of doors. I mean, were people surprised to hear you? What's your feeling on the ground? Is there, you know, tell me some stories about what was like on the road and probably what led you to this, right? You heard the stories that made you think this is where you need to go next, right?
Totally. And again, you know, I think we just ran out of time.
Yeah.
So what we did something that was pretty cool in that we decided to do a walk a mile in your shoes tour.
Oh, cool.
Where we got people together and we literally walked a mile together. There were some places we went where we had 150, 180, 200 people walking with us.
Wow.
Right. And so collectively, we took 3 million steps. Right. We set out to take 1 million, which would have represented a step for every person who could have voted but didn't. We ended up taking over 3 million steps, which actually represents 1 step for every Arkansan.
Wow.
Now, what does that mean? Like in those walks, we had conversations about what drives people, what motivates people, what frustrates people, what's the local stories that exist. And I think the biggest thing that came out of that was a sense of thankfulness that we showed up.
Yeah.
As people are so used to being ignored. They're so used to not being heard. They're so used to not being seen. Now that's in the bounds of Arkansas. And when you layer on what you talked about earlier, how national groups are not seeing places in the South, places in the Midwest, places that look impossible. Right? And they're turning their head. People feel that.
Yeah.
Like people, you don't have to say it in words, but people feel like, oh, you're actually not paying attention to me right now. Right. Especially don't. And if they don't think you're listening, then they themselves feel like you don't care. So that's one big thing. That's one of the big things that came out of this election in my conversation, that people started to feel like, oh, wait a minute, there are folks out there that care. There are folks out there that are listening, and that makes a difference. But look, it's a different kind of politics. And the example I give, if I can go nerdy on you again,
I love it,
is nuclear power.
But right? You're like nerd, also like pastor too, so it's quite a it's like the most eloquent nerd shit I've ever heard. But I digress. But go nerd on me, brother.
Yeah. So when I think about it, there's nuclear power, and there are 2 kinds of nuclear power. One is nuclear fission. It's just you take an atom, a large atom, and you split it, and when you split it, energy is released. Nuclear fission, it's like it powers 20% of our country. In places like France, it powers 80%. These big nuclear power plants you see, that's nuclear fission. That's powerful. Energy is released. When I think about where our politics is now in this country, it's the politics of nuclear fission. How can I divide? How can I, break off this group? Because if I can break off this group and control them and divide everyone else, then I'll maintain power. Yeah, that is a force to be reckoned with. But the other kind of nuclear power is nuclear fusion, where you take 2 smaller atoms and you fuse them together, you bind them together. And when you do that, energy is also released. The beauty is that energy is far more powerful. It's far stronger than nuclear fission. that's the kind of politics that folks like Marcus Flowers and myself are really trying to bring together. Like let's actually come together, because the energy that's released is more powerful. Now I will say, and by the way, the sun is a big ball of nuclear fusion, because it's a plasma. Plasma is the fourth state of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma.
Yep.
And so when I think about what we can do, I'm also reminded that to get to nuclear fusion, it takes a lot more energy. It takes a lot more effort you have to put into the system. So you have to build organizations like Mission Democracy. You have to build organizations like the Vortex. You have to run and fail and run again and then maybe win or then maybe fail. You have to go compete everywhere. You have to invest in places that look like you won't get a win. Like that's the power of nuclear fusion, and you do that by bringing people together. So that's the kind of politics that we want to bring about.
I love it. And that's exactly what we say. That's one of the things that with tomorrow is like, we're not going to do this alone. I was telling my social media team just yesterday, saying, hey, look, we're going to use we words now. You know what I mean? When you transition from a campaign to, it's like, no, this is we. I mean, we're not going to do this alone. We're not going to raise enough money. We're not going to get hold of enough people. We're not going to be on the ground in Arkansas saying, okay, Chris, which candidates are going to get this money? Who's going to be your nominee? We're not doing primaries. We can only do nominees. We have a conditional funding model that means that when the nominee comes in, he's going to get money, right? And so,
nice.
And so it's going to be unique, but we're going to help you. We're going to partner. But you're right, it is a grouping, right? And that's why I love that model you're using, because I also know a little bit about it. It takes pressure. It takes multiple sides.
There you go.
You can't just do one side, right? It's going to take.
You.
I'll see you.
I'll see you.
I don't know. I got a graduate degree myself. It ain't science, but that's exactly. You got to put. It takes us all coming together and putting the pressure together and working together and coming together, and that's what thrills me when I do these works. And I've met so many wonderful people. I had just the privilege to go to the Congressional Black Caucus PAC summer retreat in New York last summer with Marcus, and man, there's a few things I've gone to have been more inspiring to me and positive about the future of this party than meeting, talking to Hakeem Jeffries, talking to our leaders over there, and seeing the power of bringing these communities together. We could do a lot together. So I think my last question for you is one I think we get a lot of extreme vitriol. I think I was called some names today because of the tweet I did yesterday. Yes, right. I'm sure you took a beating on the road, and you still do. And there's work. I mean, what gives you hope? I mean, when you see the vitriol, and then I know you're facing an uphill battle, right? We know that we're not stupid people. What gives you hope at this moment? As you sit here now after your tough election, launching a PAC, you're still in the fight. You get up in the morning every day. What gives you hope?
Yeah. Well, a few things. One, I'm inspired by the sense of what is possible, right? So, I worked at NASA, and there are lots of failures on the way to putting a rover on Mars.
Yeah.
But the image, the sense, the possibility of actually accomplishing that feat allows you to every day push through. And so when I worked there, I was working on the plasma rocket, and there are plenty of failure, but the sense of doing this will take us to places we've never been, and will allow us to have experiences we've never had. So that's one thing that gives me hope. And then on a day-to-day basis, when I run across kids who, and this is in the last couple of weeks, have shown up at our events, because I did a couple of speaking events here recently, particularly during Black History Month. And there were 2 or 3 occasions in the last month where a teenager and a middle schooler asked their parents if they could come to the event. And they were excited about, listening and hearing and being a part of it. That gives me hope. When I see that 1,000 kids walked out of school in protest to a bill that they studied and they figured out, that gives me hope. And then when I remind myself of the stories, even from the campaign trail, there was a town we went to that has a pretty bad racist past. And I went there to visit it. And most people say Democrats shouldn't go there, ignore it, leave it alone. But I went there. First time I got there, I sat at lunch with 2 people, a brother and sister. Right, it was 2 people.
Welcome to the welcome committee.
Right, 2 people. But other places I went, we had dozens of folks, and even had a couple. But it was 2 people. We had 2-hour conversation about what mattered. They told me about the volunteer fire department and then the 40-year-old equipment that they have, about the only having 2 ambulances in this big county. Then I went back. And when I went back a few months later, they brought 60 people.
Wow.
Right. And then I went back and near the end of the campaign, and I had a conversation with one of the 2 people I met the first time. And what he said was, man, I wanted to tell you, my neighbor came up to me the other day. My neighbor, he hasn't met you, but he knows about you because he knows you came to our town a couple times.
Yeah. This
guy is 6'5". He's a Trump voter. He has a Confederate flag tattooed on his body. And he said, you know that guy, Chris Jones? The fact that he showed up, I like him. I think I'm going to vote for him. Right? So opening the door for some, helping others have hope in themselves, and then appreciating that there is a world that we can actually have where everyone is given an opportunity to thrive, where everyone matters and where we're fighting for everyone. Like that exists. Yeah. We can have it with the right work. That's what gives me hope.
I love it. And I saw the same kind of thing in the trail up in Georgia, and I've seen it elsewhere. I've knocked on doors. People are like, you're here, you care. And that's what they want to hear. They want to be heard. It's human nature, right? I just want to be heard. I want to be part of something. And it goes back to circling all the way back to the very beginning of this conversation, the organizations we were both now involved in, that the goal is to energize and know that their people are heard. And if they're heard, they'll come out for us. They have to believe it. We can't just come every 4 years and say, hey, we need you right now, and that's it. So what a great place to end the conversation, Chris. I can't thank you enough for your time. Most importantly, I got to plug your stuff because Matt's going to push this out here. Yeah. So where do we find you, Dr. Jones? Where do we find Vortex PAC? Tell me more about that.
I'm still on social media at Jones for FORAR, Jones for AR. Vortex PAC is Vortex Arkansas, VORTEXARKANSAS on social media. Yep. But it's Vortex PAC. VORTEXPAC, vortexpac.com, and you can find out all information about us. We have our nomination process open. So if you know some Arkansans, call them and tell them, hey, nominate. If you want to donate and support the organization, please do. Yep. Because it's going to matter, and we're going to bring some competition to these races.
It's a noble race, and if you guys care about Arkansas, you care about the Midwest, you care about any of it, give this man a help, because it's going to matter. Because the thing is, what you're going to do. We change out those congressmen. That's a national impact. That makes a difference, right? So that's it. This isn't. We don't live in a bubble anymore. We all work together. Chris, what a pleasure, Dr. Jones. Thanks for joining me, man. I'm so glad you reached out to me. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation. Yeah. Clearly, it's not gonna be our last, my friend. So we're gonna be talking more. I got it. Yeah, I'll be booking you for those conversations, because I'm very excited to work with you and thrilled to have you on the show. And thanks for everything you do for our country. Thanks for taking on the brave act of stepping up. I want to tell candidates that every time I have a candidate on the show, I want to tell them that it's an act of courage to step up. It's an act of courage to put yourself in the arena, and you get dinged up. And I saw my friend Marcus go through it. I saw my friend Luke Mixon in Louisiana. It hurts. Those barbs, those arrows do land occasionally. And so it's an act of courage to run. So I appreciate you for doing that. And your country needs you, and your country still needs you. So thanks for everything you do, my friend.
Thanks, my friend. You take care, all right?
Good talking to you. Man, right? What a great conversation. Dr. Jones, he opened up when he came on camera. I said, Dr. Jones, I presume, which I was pretty proud of myself, but it was kind of dorky. Matt thought it was hilarious. but I digress. Man, what a great show. What a great leader. I'm thrilled what he's doing. It's just a small world that our world's going to collide in our work with Mission Democracy and then the Vortex PAC. Check both organizations out. As I mentioned, you can find me as always on the internet, FP Wellman, at FP Wellman on Twitter. I'm still on there. I'm at FP Wellman on Spoutable and Post, and FP Wellman Official on Instagram. Of course, my new organization, I'm the executive director and a co-founder for it, is missiondemocracy.org. We are on all the socials at MISSN Democracy, because Mission Democracy is too long. We couldn't do it. So anyway, we're also on Instagram and everywhere else. In the meantime, check out our partners, Vi Media. Vi Media, of course, is your digital marketing partner. They're based right here in St. Louis. They do great work. They own the studio. They own Matt. They take very good care of me. They're very good at what they do. They're a nationwide organization now, and they keep growing. That's vi.media. vie.media. It's vie.media on the internet. Check them out. In the meantime, please subscribe to the show if you're not. If you found our clips, if you found us on the Twitter, if you found anywhere else, please subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We love the downloads. Leave a good review. 5 stars would be awesome. Leave some words. Say Fred talks too fast. I'm used to it. I got about 10 of those reviews. It's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I mean, it hurts my feeling a little, but it's fine. Either way, do it. And we appreciate you. Thanks for being part of the show. There's a lot more exciting things to come. Mission Democracy is going to be exciting. I'm so very proud to be partnered with such capable and smart people and to build a staff of incredible people. I think you're going to enjoy the work. So having said that, thanks for joining On Democracy. We will see you next week.